Under the wooden canopy of an old station, every journey began with a little ritual that felt essential, like the trip couldn't truly start without it. A quiet line formed in front of the counter, polished smooth by countless elbows over the years. People chatted softly, shifted their bags, and children stood on tiptoe, trying to peek through the window where a stern but kind clock sat behind a brass frame. When it was your turn, the whole world shrank to the small space between you and that window. From neat wooden drawers he pulled thick cardboard tickets, perfectly square, a little rough to the touch, carrying the faint smell of fresh printer's ink. Then came the moment everyone waited for. The short, crisp snap of the date stamp. That sound marked the official start of the trip, like an invisible seal giving you permission to begin the adventure waiting just minutes away. Coins rolled across the counter with a gentle clink. The clerk counted change slowly and carefully, as if following some ancient rule. Sometimes he'd mention the weather down at the coast, or ask the children if they were ready for the ride. Those tiny gestures turned a simple transaction into something personal and warm, a brief connection you'd remember long after. And then the ticket was in your hand, just a small rectangle of card, but it felt so much more important. You slipped it into a pocket or wallet right away, like a little capsule holding all the memories yet to come. From that instant, the journey had already begun, even if the train hadn't arrived yet, and that tiny piece of cardboard set the mood better than any poster or announcement ever could. Out on the platform before departure, everything had its own lively rhythm, chaotic, noisy, yet somehow perfectly in sync. The moment you stepped out of the ticket hall, sounds rushed in. Low voices, suitcase wheels clattering on the tiles, the occasional porter's whistle, workers calling to one another. Mixed in was the faint smell of coal steam drifting through the cracks and hanging over the tracks. The air itself seemed to push you forward, urging you not to miss a thing. Families stayed close together along the edge, as if afraid the crowd might sweep someone away. Kids kept breaking free, tugging at sleeves, desperate to spot the train. Some jumped to see overheads, others pressed against the railing, staring down the shimmering line of tracks. Every time the loudspeakers crackled with an announcement, everything paused for a second. Was that our train? The platform buzzed with movement. Luggage carts rattled over the wooden planks, wheels catching now and then between tiles until a porter gave them a practiced shove. In the shadows along the wall, people double-checked bags or tightened straps. Someone knelt to tie a child's shoe. Someone else passed around a thermos of hot tea, and some just stood there soaking it all in. The noise, the smells, the barely contained excitement. But the real star was the waiting. You could feel it in every glance, every shift of weight, even in the faint vibration rising from the rails. It was that special feeling that something important was about to arrive and everything was getting ready. People looked up at the slightest sound, kids whispered excitedly, and even the adults, trying to stay calm, kept scanning the distance like they were rereading a favorite page. Then, far down the line, the first thin ribbon of a steam appeared. The crowd changed, backs straightened, hands gripped handles tighter, eyes lit up with quiet joy. The platform stopped being a place to wait and became the gateway to a new day, a new holiday, a new road. Right there, amid the noise and motion, you could feel the adventure was already breathing down your neck. When the train finally rounded the bend, it felt like a curtain slowly rising. First, a stir in the air, a tremble underfoot, then a thick cloud of steam spilling over the rails. Through the white haze, the locomotive took shape, dark, heavy, forged from metal that had seen thousands of miles and hundreds of stories. It approached slowly but with dignity, announcing itself to everyone on the platform. Closer now, you heard the soft creak of cooling metal like the engine was catching its breath. Pistons hissed in steady rhythm, a sound that stuck in your memory right away. To the children, it seemed alive, a giant creature about to open its eyes and carry them away. The shiny sides gleamed, catching flashes of light and the shadows of people on the platform. There was something grand about it, almost ceremonial, like greeting something rare and important. The crowd quieted, but inside everyone the excitement boiled. Some stepped forward to read the engine number or glimpse the driver. He'd lean out, a little dusty, a small smile on his face, a man who knew the road like an old friend. Sometimes he raised a hand in greeting, and that simple wave made children's eyes sparkle and grown-ups stand a little taller without realizing it. The locomotive eased to a stop, like a great beast settling down before the leap. Steam curled around the steps, drifted between the wheels, and rose in thin threads. The roar of motion faded into soft sighs. That brief pause, motion turning to stillness, always felt special. It was as if the train gave everyone a few seconds to check they had everything and were truly ready. Then came the expectant hush. Passengers spread along the cars, picking doors. Kids dragged parents forward, racing for the best window seats. The platform became a bridge between ordinary life and the adventure ahead. When the guard's short whistle sounded, light as a bird call, everything inside stilled. The engine took a deep breath, heavy and slow, and began to move. One turn of the wheels, and the story began anew for every passenger, through windows, steam, and the rush of wind that arrived seconds later. Inside the carriage, the air was thick with talk, footsteps, and the gentle creak of old fittings, yet the closeness never felt oppressive. It was simply part of sharing the journey. Through half-open compartment doors, families peeked out, sizing up new neighbors, welcoming the invisible community about to spend hours side by side. Baskets, bags, sand buckets, neatly folded coats, all created a cozy clutter that hinted at eager anticipation. Doors swayed on curves with their familiar click when the rhythm changed. At the windows, a small battle began. Children claimed first rights, insisting they'd spot every detail. Tired parents smiled at the enthusiasm, helped everyone settle, and made sure no one leaned out too far. As speed built, wind slipped through cracks, bringing scents of metal, old wood, and distant smoke. Someone carefully opened a thermos, trying not to spill on the shaky table. Soon, sandwiches appeared, wrapped in greaseproof paper that rustled like an old friend. When the paper crinkled, the whole carriage seemed to pause, remembering similar trips. Passengers swapped brief words. How far to the next town? Memories of past journeys. No formality here. Strangers felt like old acquaintances who'd just met again. Overhead, luggage nets swayed and jingled softly with every vibration. Someone stood to adjust a bag or pull down a blanket. These small movements set a rhythm everyone fell into. Even babies, dozing to the steady clack of wheels or demanding attention, became part of the gentle magic, reminding everyone that every trip starts with simple human stories. Little annoyances that might irritate elsewhere felt perfectly natural here. A sticky window needed teamwork to open. Now and then a fleck of coal flew in and left a smudge on a sleeve, a badge many would later recall with a smile. All these imperfect, ordinary moments wove together into the real feeling of travel. Lively, noisy, a bit messy, but wonderfully warm. Inside the carriage, it was easiest to understand that a train journey wasn't just getting from one place to another. It was a shared story where everyone had their own seat, their own view, their own small rituals. That's what filled the air with something special, a mix of bustle, anticipation, and quiet happiness that comes when people share space not because they have to, but because they're all heading towards something new. The dining car always felt like its own little universe, running by its own gentle rules. Step inside and the noise of the other carriages faded, replaced by soft conversation and the light clink of cups. The narrow aisle carried scents of hot tea, fresh baking, and something sweet that always seemed to belong to train journeys, even if no one could quite name it. Behind the counter, staff in white jackets worked calmly and precisely, pouring boiling water into thick china cups, slicing pies with practiced ease, laying out meat rolls on waxed paper. Everything moved quickly, yet without rush, like a routine they'd perfected years ago. They traded short jokes with passengers or simply nodded, always making you feel there'd be something simple and good to eat on the way. The people were all different, and that made the place alive. A family with children clutching coins for treats stood at the counter. Behind them, workers returning from a job sipped tea and talked about the evening ahead. Farther down, an older couple guarded a picnic basket that looked like it had traveled with them for decades. They all shared the space by chance, each bringing their own quiet story. When the train swayed, passengers instinctively steadied cups and plates, accepting the motion as part of the charm. Even shy children soon grew bold, studying the display case like it held treasure. Conversation softened toward the middle of the car. No one lingered long, yet those few minutes stayed with you. There was no luxury here, just honest food, hot drinks, and the sense that this little island of warmth existed purely to keep travelers going. When people returned to their seats carrying tea or a modest pie, they brought a bit of that world with them. The faint sound of voices and clinking dishes drifted after them while the train sped on. But the memory of that short visit lingered. A small rest stop, a reminder that travel is about more than miles. It's about the moments that make the road softer and more human. Once the train left the city behind, the change came almost at once. Windows that had reflected rows of houses now opened onto wider spaces, as if someone was slowly drawing back curtains on a new scene. Warehouses and bridges flashed by first, then green stripes of meadow neatly divided by hedges. Fields rolled out like patches on a giant quilt, calm and certain, as though they'd been waiting for you all morning. The steady beat of the wheels grew more even, and passengers fell into its rhythm, letting the train tell its own story. Some leaned closer to catch the fresh smell of grass and warm earth. Farms flickered past so fast they looked like tiny models placed along the route. Through open vents came distant bird calls, wind racing the train, the faint scent of thick bushes lining the tracks. Now and then, an old station platform appeared, small, tidy, lovingly cared for. Time seemed to move differently there. Often just one person waited, the station master in his uniform, calmly watching the train go by. Passengers sometimes raised a hand in reply, even knowing he probably couldn't see. The farther you went, the more the view became a moving painting. Church spires rose on the horizon, peaking above trees. Meadows gave way to deep forests where sunlight barely reached the ground, then opened again to wide fields, rippled by the wind like water. A gentle calm settled over the carriage. People spoke less and looked out more, letting the journey do its work. Children who'd been bouncing on seats suddenly grew still, foreheads pressed to the glass, watching a world that changed every second, green, golden, misty. It was a pause when no one hurried, when the road itself gave you the gift of time you usually lack. The longer the train traveled that endless ribbon of landscape, the clearer it became that every mile carried you farther from daily rush and closer to rest. The scenes needed no explanation. They simply passed, calm chapters in the story. Even those who'd started out detached found themselves gazing longer at passing villages, hedges, fields. Mixed with the steady clack of wheels, it made the world feel wider and time softer. In those minutes, travel became more than a ride. It became a bridge to the day waiting ahead. When the train slowed for a small midway station, a whole new little world appeared. Brief but vivid, full of new smells, voices, and traces of another place. Doors opened with a soft click, letting in cool air and the lingering scent of local bakery rolls still warm from early ovens. Sometimes you caught a hint of damp wood from old benches painted decades ago and still smelling of pine tar on cool mornings. Few passengers stepped out, but those who did felt instantly wrapped in a tiny separate universe. The platform might stretch only a few cars long, with a neat station hut whose big windows reflected the passing train. Inside, you could glimpse brass trays, stacks of old forms, a coffee mug left as if the attendant had just stepped away. Those who stayed aboard watched like it was a living postcard. They listened to muffled voices outside, locals chatting about weather, buses, village news, so simple and genuine you could feel a quieter way of life. It made you think, time runs differently here, far from the noisy cities the train had left. Sometimes a farmer in a wide hat arrived carrying a box of greens or flowers for the city, right on schedule without checking a watch. The train was as much a part of his day as walking his fields. The conductor greeted him with a nod, no words needed. In that moment, everyone inside felt the journey touch local life, as if the train briefly joined the community. Small details, the creak of old wooden doors, a distant bicycle bell, the thin whistle of wind between rails, built an atmosphere where every sound mattered. Even passengers with closed laptops or books looked up to catch one more glimpse. When the train moved on, people settled back into their journey, carrying a tiny, almost invisible gift from the stop. Someone still smelled fresh bread. Someone remembered the calm face of the station master, holding the rhythm of the timetable. It all blurred past the window as quickly as it came, yet left a soft warmth that made the rest of the trip gentler. These midway stations weren't destinations, but they gave the journey depth, proof that the route was alive, not just for passengers, but for everyone living along the line. On a long trip, there often came a moment when your eyes drifted to a stranger nearby. Not to start a conversation, but because everyone in the carriage suddenly seemed part of the same quiet play, no lines spoken aloud. People sat across, beside, or down the aisle, different, unknown, yet bound together for a while by the same road. Watching them felt natural, inevitable. Sometimes it was the smallest things that caught you. A woman carefully smoothing a wool blanket on her lap. A man in a work coat laying out tiny tools on the table as if preparing for something important. A teenager tracing shapes on foggy glass that vanished seconds later. Those details made them real, relatable, alive. The charm was that each person was a little world you'd never fully know, just what you saw in that moment. Someone cradled fresh flowers tied with ribbon. Someone turned pages of an old notebook filled with neat handwriting. A young woman read a letter folded many times, smiling faintly now and then as if sharing a secret only with herself. They were like clues hinting at stories riding away with them. Sometimes eyes met and both people looked away quickly, caught at something too private. Yet in those brief crossings there was a strange, warm solidarity. No names, no questions, just understanding without words. On a train, a glance could say as much as a long talk. Tiredness, anticipation, worry about what lay ahead, or joy carefully hidden. Some passengers stayed in memory, not for noise or bright clothes, but for quiet presence. An older woman with an embroidered bag, head slightly tilted as if hearing music only she knew. A man in a neatly tucked shirt watching the rails like he was watching time itself pass. They created pockets of calm others unconsciously matched. What touched most were unexpected acts of kindness between strangers. Someone gave up a seat, helped lift a bag to the rack, or held a door without a word. Those simple gestures melted the usual city walls, leaving room for human warmth that asked nothing in return. In those moments, you felt every journey has two sides, the visible one, maps, timetables, seat numbers, and the hidden one of fleeting glances, small gestures, and silent stories. They vanished when the train stopped, yet somehow lingered longer than the landscapes outside. On the way home, the carriage carried a different mood, quiet, unhurried, thoughtful. Everyone knew the holiday was ending, and it showed in every motion. Suitcases felt heavier, bags bulkier, shelves now held new souvenirs, packets of sea salt, photos, little beach toys. Movements were gentler, as if trying to stretch the final hours. Children slept on parents' shoulders, sometimes shifting to leave traces of sand on clothes. Their breathing blended with the soothing clack of wheels, lulling adults too. The carriage drifted into half-sleep. Hushed talk, muffled laughter, rustle of newspapers and food wrappers. No one hurried, and the world outside seemed far away, leaving the train its own slow universe. The same fields, churches, bushes, and small stations rolled by, but now they felt familiar, almost like home. Where passengers once chased every detail on the way out, they now watched calmly, sometimes smiling at memories of sunny days and small joys. The return trip was quiet but rich with satisfied reflection, proof the holiday had truly happened. Occasional soft conversations rose, parents planning which photos to show friends, children recounting sea games or fairground rides. Others simply watched the view, each mile the final brushstroke on a finished picture. Even little annoyances, sticky windows, faint noise from next door, felt gentle now, just part of the whole. Toward the end, the mood grew especially intimate. Voices faded, many rested heads against windows, watching city outlines draw nearer. A soft sadness mixed with joy and tired contentment formed the backdrop for the last minutes. When the train finally slowed for home, completion felt real. People gathered belongings, checked bags, straightened coats and hats. Despite weariness, faces glowed with quiet happiness. Tiny souvenirs, photos, grains of sand, proof the trip had lived and left its mark. Though the journey ended, its memories traveled on with every passenger, gently nudging toward new routes, new discoveries, new moments that might one day matter just as much. Looking back, it's clear a 1960s train journey was far more than getting from one place to another. Every detail, from the crisp stamp on the ticket to the smell of coal and steam, from hot tea in the dining car to the first glimpse of sea, wove together into a feeling of travel that stayed with you forever. It was a rhythm you couldn't rush. Every turn of the wheels, every creak of a door, every shift of a bag created a unique fabric of memory. Today's trains are faster, smoother, more high-tech, yet they can't recreate that same atmosphere, a blend of anticipation, joy, and small imperfections that became the charm of the ride. The smells, the sounds, the gentle shake of the carriage, all shaped a sense of real adventure. Those memories live in anyone who once stood on a platform clutching a ticket, watched steam rise, and felt the thrill of a holiday in every moment of the trip. Sometimes it's worth pausing to recall the details. Who sat nearby? What sounds you heard? What you held in your hands? How sunlight slanted through the windows? Those ordinary little things actually built whole universes of feeling, linking people and moments across time. They remind us that travel isn't only about arriving. It's every second along the way, every meeting, every sound and scent that becomes part of your own story. And then you can't help asking yourself, what was your first train journey like? Where were you headed? What did you notice first? What small souvenirs did you bring home? Often it's those details of the road that stay with us longest, quietly proving that the journey itself can matter far more than any destination it leads to. Every moment, every smile, every glance is a tiny story that lives on inside us, turning a simple trip into a lasting memory full of life, warmth, and gentle magic.